Brainstorm, bringing great minds and ideas together, exploring a wide variety of opportunities, achieving academic excellence, using the latest technology, government's impact, preparing for 21st century careers, parenting and health issues, topics shaping tomorrow. Brainstorm with Lisa Williver, bringing great minds and ideas together.
Welcome to Brainstorm. I'm Lisa Williver, and today we're talking about urban education. Before we begin, let's learn a little bit more about our topic. The buses arrive, the bell rings, and another school day begins. While all students experience some challenges, urban students face even more, from students living in poverty to staffing issues and even crime. As a result, urban educators must possess a dedication to excel under less than perfect circumstances. So joining me today, I have two very special guests, Dr. Tabitha DeLangelo, and you are an associate professor at the College of New Jersey, and Dr. Jonathan Davis, you are also an assistant professor of secondary education at the College of New Jersey. That's a mouthful, so I am very happy to have that part done. I want you to tell us a little bit about your background in education.
Well, I actually started as a special education teacher, and I worked in South Jersey, and then went to Philadelphia and worked in Philadelphia high schools for a long time, helped to develop and implement an after-school program, and then have been at the College of New Jersey. I think this is my 12th year, and our urban education program started in 2009.
Wonderful. Okay, how about you, Jonathan?
Great. So I started my teaching career in Northern Kentucky. I taught just outside of Cincinnati high school social studies for a few years, and then moved back to New York, where I taught in both Manhattan and Brooklyn, and was in small high schools in New York, and worked as a baseball coach as well, and worked in the community, and had the opportunity to be a department chair and really help kind of shape our department as this school really grew and blossomed.
Wonderful. So we're talking about urban education, and you're both really involved in teacher preparation for urban education. And I know when I was doing a lot of the research, there's kind of an elusiveness to the actual definition of urban education. Could one of you give me a working definition for the viewers of what urban education really is?
I mean, I think that urban education is a tricky topic, and it's often a catch-all phrase that nobody can truly define in one way. And I think one thing we try to do in our teacher preparation programs is help our students understand that it goes beyond a stigma of what urban means, that it's working with students in often more densely populated areas from very diverse settings, and diverse is a large term, so it could be race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomics, but that you're often in an urban school context working within a more heterogeneous environment where you have to really get to know the diverse backgrounds with the students that you'll be working with.
Thank you. You know, that's very helpful, because I do think sometimes people think they know what urban education is, or there is a stigma or a misunderstanding sometimes attached to it. I was doing some research for some information, and the Council of Great Schools estimates that there's 7.3 million students who attend urban schools in our country. So I really think that that's a lot of children, and I think we definitely need, not just in the educational community, but in the greater community, we need an understanding of what it is. Can you explain, Tabitha, a lot of people don't realize your zip code has a lot to do with your education, that your zip code matters when it comes to education. Can you talk about that for a moment, of your location?
Yeah, well, there's a strong correlation between zip code and poverty, and there's a strong relationship between poverty and how your academic outcomes. And so when we talk about urban education, we're often talking about places that have limited resources and historically underperforming schools. And so a lot of that is related to property taxes and how much power a state has. For instance, in New Jersey, where we teach, although some people will say that children get about the same amount per student in schools, because in certain municipalities, there's such a high tax base that parents have a lot of power, and parents make, they make decisions that are best for their kids, and that they really, they'll shake the trees and make things happen. Whereas in a place like Trenton, where we work close to, or Newark or Jersey City or any other urban area, the tax base is low, so the state is funding the gap. And when the state is paying the bills, they're making decisions, and they're not always making the best decisions for the kids. They often implement one-size-fits-all programming, and we know one size does not fit all. And quite frankly, sometimes they make decisions for the children that in a municipality with a higher tax base, those parents would never let that fly. And so there's a power dynamic that influences what happens in the schools as well.
I couldn't agree more. I taught in the city of Trenton for 8 years, and even though I grew up in the city, and I lived there for 34 years, when I started teaching, actually being in a school that was high poverty, 95% of our students were free lunch. So that told us about the socioeconomic status. And they're very transient. So the kids would go from school to school. And when I got them in 4th grade, sometimes they had already been to 12 different schools. So that meant services couldn't keep up, because if a teacher identified them as, we need to do a child study, he's struggling. By the time his number got called, he was in another school. So there was this issue of, your zip code does have so much to do with it. And I don't think sometimes, I don't think there's a general understanding of how urban students, what they face. So I have a list here of some just little topics that, not a lot, but let's just talk about each one for a few seconds. Poverty, all right, which is a big one. That one deserves an entire episode. But poverty is not just their amount of money in a bank account or their wallet. It affects their entire life. Can you talk about all the different impacts poverty has on them?
Yeah, I think first, and in no order in any way, students are often, who are living in poverty, are wondering where their next meal is coming from.
Absolutely.
And if they don't know when or where they're going to eat, that can affect their ability and willingness to want to first be in school. And school may be the first place where they're able to get a consistent meal for breakfast and for lunch. And then you're also, when you're living in poverty, you may not know where you're living. And that transiency that you discussed is really pivotal, because the students will be in a home when they can be, but it might be a group home. It might be that they're living on the couches of different family members or friends, and that might be in a town next door. So they're having to move schools, or their commute is tripled or quadrupled. And so these are things that a lot of teachers and parents who are new to working in urban schools don't necessarily understand when their student walks in and is exhausted and just wants to put his or her head down. And they think that that student may be lazy or doesn't care, but
I think that is one of the biggest stigmas, is that people, they're not trying hard enough.
I want to just add that what's overarching all of that is stress, right? And so a lot of, not just the kids, but the parents, if my parents are stressed out, that influences me. If my teachers are stressed out, and guess what? In these high needs districts, the teachers are under so much pressure that they're also, contributing to the overall stress level in the climate. And we know that when you're stressed, your cognitive functioning suffers, your ability to retain information, to remember, to attend, right? So add that to being hungry or being tired or anything else. We're just not creating environments that are conducive for learning.
And I think even the interest, it's like just the interest to be there on top of the things you just mentioned. If you're hungry and you don't know when you go home if anybody's going to be there, are you that interested in that math lesson at that point? So it's hard to get the students to buy into what you're trying to do as an educator. The other thing related to poverty is the multi-generational poverty. A lot of people, when I speak to people and I talk about urban education, they don't seem to understand why people live in poverty, as if they can just walk out of it. And they don't realize that it's multi-generational. So this student that I have now, and they'll say, well, where are the parents? Well, they may have experienced the same situation when they were there. And it could go back generations and generations, and it just continues unless we collectively decide to do something about that. family situation. Talk about the family situations for many of the students in urban settings.
Well, I want to say, I do want to flip the script a little bit and be sure that we're not approaching this from a deficit model. You know, urban areas aren't bad places.
No.
There are a lot of amazing assets in the urban areas. And so, yeah, so while some kids, I mean, quite frankly, we have some children who are homeless, but they still show up at school every day, right? So that's a reality. We have obviously, you know, lots of single parent families or children who are being raised by other adults, but they're not necessarily, you know, bad situations. They're maybe just not ideal, but there's not a lack of care. I mean, I've definitely never met a parent, even maybe a parent who I know is gang involved, who doesn't want the best for their kids. And so, you know, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think that it is important to really look at the assets of the community, and that just because a parent has to work multiple jobs or may have to, you know, because of context, may be involved in what's perceived as illegal activity because that's how they can provide for their children. It's not out of lack of care. But this sort of vicious cycle of poverty is something that's embedded in the structural inequalities that exist within our societies. And I think a lot of people don't understand this is not a choice. There are so many barriers that are in place that we do need to start by looking at all of the assets that our students bring. Just because our students may live in one room with 7 people because that's what they can afford, we need to celebrate how they're able to work collaboratively and independently. And they may not have the structured piano lessons and tutoring and all these different activities, but they're learning true independence. They're able to, at a younger age, really show love and care and support for younger siblings that other students who may grow up in a more affluent community and have their own room and have the ability to join all these clubs, that those students may actually need a little bit more support in the idea of independence. So if we can start to celebrate all the amazing things that our students do and recognize opportunity and resource gaps that exist within the school and community context, then we can really work together to support these students in the most positive ways.
I love that. And I also think creativity. I found when I taught in Trenton, the children were so creative, and a lot of that was they didn't have as much as other kids. So they were able to use their imagination and to play and musical. You know, they were very artistic, and it was a really beautiful thing to see that given the lack of resources, that deficit was made up with something else, you know, with, you know, doors close and a window opens, and these kids were just able to entertain themselves.
Well, we need schools to create space for that. And right now we're getting, especially in urban areas, these really scripted programs that don't allow teachers to, you know, because you as a teacher, you know your students, you know what they're great at. But if the scripted program says we're going to read for 45 minutes, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, then the assets in the community get squashed, right?
You know what? We're going to come back. We'll be back in one moment, and I do want to continue with that topic. So we'll be back in another second with some more Brainstorm.
Everything starts out small. The things that hurt us, they all start from somewhere. The words we say, the things we do, they can grow into something else. What was small and innocent can become big and sometimes scary. All it takes is one comment, one picture, one video for something to catch fire. But a big problem doesn't need a big response. Not at first. Even if we don't know what to say, the eye emoji can be that first step we take. Let's all pledge to take that first small step together and change the world in a big way. I'm a witness, and so are you.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. This is a serious problem, but one we can solve. Visit feedingamerica.org to help. Together we can solve hunger. Together we're feeding America.
We just finished dinner and it was time for homework. He hates homework. I know he's bright.
Why is it It's so hard for me.
He's
I'm
just gotta
trying as
try a
hard
little
as
harder.
I can.
1 in 5 children struggle with learning and attention issues. Go from misunderstanding to understood.org.
And we're back with more Brainstorm. We're talking about urban education with Dr. Jonathan Davis from the College of New Jersey and Dr. Tabitha Delangelo, also from the College of New Jersey. And before the break, we were talking about structured curriculums and programs. And we find that a lot of the urban schools face this situation where every single thing is prescribed. This time of day, every fourth grade teacher will be doing these pages, and tomorrow you'll be doing those. When I was teaching, this was just coming in to be. And I remember saying to the liaison, what if my class doesn't get this concept? I can go back the next day, and they said, no, they'll catch up. And I have proof that they don't catch up because they didn't catch up. Right. I mean, it's common sense. But talk about these prescribed programs and how they're affecting urban students.
Well, they are affecting urban students in many ways, and often it's because they're one size fits all. And so we may know that the students in the classroom have particular strengths, or that there's a topic that would really interest them. But as teachers, we can't do those things. And we often, because we train teachers who want to be in high needs districts, and we train them to use inquiry-based methods and discovery learning and inductive methods and all these great pedagogical strategies. And then they go in the field and they say, we're not allowed to do that. And that's really a heartbreak, because as a teacher, you're an expert, you know something. You see exactly what some students need, but depending on where you teach, you may not have the freedom to do what you know is right.
Right. And I think the challenge is that the states across the country are using assessments to drive how they're evaluating students, schools, and teachers. And as a result of that, because of these opportunity gaps that we were discussing before the break, there is an associated achievement gap that exists. And so students are not thriving on these exams, and therefore states are coming in and saying we need to do something about it. And they're deeming these schools failing or quote unquote priority schools, and that is what often leads to these scripted curricula and also different assessment measures that the teachers and the students need to be using. And what makes it challenging for teachers is that administrators don't want their schools to shut down, and they're feeling pressure from their districts and from the state, and so they end up teaching towards the test, using the curriculum, whereas it's the exact opposite of what those schools need to be doing. They need to be really working with the students from where they're at and finding a way to engage them, get them excited about learning, and using this inquiry-based instruction. And so it's hard, especially for our pre-service teachers who are about to go out in the field. We encounter this all the time, and so we need to give them strategies on how to work within the system. And so I'll tell my own stories about how when I was working in New York and our students had to pass Regents exams in order to graduate, how essentially I would teach the way that I wanted and then would get the results and tell my principal, see, I got the numbers you wanted, so is it okay if I just keep doing what I'm doing versus the teaching the way that we're being told that we should be teaching. And that's hard though for an untenured teacher to do, because they want to keep their job. And so they're really stuck in the middle of how do I support the needs of my students while also doing what I'm being told to do in order to keep my job.
And that adds to the teacher stress you were talking about, because teachers are college educated professionals. And I've always felt that teaching is an art. It is not a science. It can't be duplicated and replicated with every class and every student. It changes not from year to year, but minute to minute. That classroom itself is like a living organism. And, somebody has a need in this class and somebody doesn't feel good and who's grouchy. And, all these things just keep happening over and over again. And when you take the ability of a teacher to read their class and then do the things that they know would work in lieu of somebody's program that came from who knows where, and it doesn't fit, this is where I see the problem that you also spoke about, the power, where in some districts parents would never tolerate that, but they have more power.
Right.
So it is something that I think, when you're going to get somebody who wants to be a teacher and you're doing your pre-teaching service, you want to, and it's hard enough to be a teacher, but to get somebody into an urban setting prepared, I think that's amazing. Talk about how it differs from just teaching, but to really get them prepared for what they will encounter in an urban setting.
Right. Well, I mean, the preparation isn't wildly different, but one of the things that's different is that some of the strategies that we teach, if you're in a district that maybe is a little bit more well off or whatever, the student teachers never have to use those strategies, right? So, but I think one of the differences is that we really take a social justice orientation toward our programming. And so one of the big pieces for our future teachers is that they're able to recognize and address inequity, right? And so where they see maybe the students have very little time to move, maybe they don't have recess, maybe they have limited time for phys ed, that they advocate for their students and find ways for them to actually move in the classroom, that they teach them that they have power in the world. So they don't write letters that just go into their inbox, they write letters that actually go to somebody so they might be able to get a response, right? So those sorts of things I think are more important in some settings, especially low resource settings, where we want students to know that they have agency in the world, that they have power. You know, that's probably one of the biggest differences is that social justice stance that we ask them to have.
And what you're doing is you're empowering the teachers who will be there on what we call the front line. They're in the classroom, they have the direct daily interaction with these students. And they can see. I mean, when I was teaching, I would have kids who would say, can you find an extra lunch downstairs so I could bring it home for dinner? Because as you mentioned, some kids get school breakfast and school lunch. They don't eat again until school breakfast. And we forget about these things. So by empowering your students to be aware of this and how you said, like to be able to almost diagnose what's happening in a situation, that's so powerful. That's really wonderful.
And I think building off of that, we also really focus on what culturally responsive pedagogy is, because
now explain that for the viewers.
So culturally responsive pedagogy is trying to get a sense of understanding who your students are and responding by creating curriculum and lessons and activities that meet the needs of their assets. And so going back to what Tabitha was talking about is we really want to move away from this deficit mindset and ideology where we truly get to know our students. We build those relationships and we're able to help make meaningful connections between our content and curriculum in their lives. And that's really one of the first steps to empowerment, is because if we're walking into our classroom with a pre-prescribed curriculum, and as most of us know, often that curriculum is very much grounded in individuals in our country who historically have had power. So it's white, wealthy men. And we need to find ways to celebrate the diversity that our country has to offer, but also understanding where our students are coming from, so that they can see that while they look around and they see individuals in power that don't look like them, we can help them build the tools and the strategies to navigate the world, to find ways where they can start accessing some of that power.
Yeah. Can I give an example?
Yes, absolutely.
So the very first graduate of our urban education program, Jessica Geckel, she teaches in Pleasantville, New Jersey. She, when she was a student teacher, was teaching one of these prescribed lessons, and it was how to. And she teaches in a place where there were a lot of recent immigrants. A lot of kids who were from Latin America. And so she wanted them to do how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And they really didn't do well with it. And she said, I don't know what to do. And we were brainstorming. Anyway, she's doing a lesson. She's reading some kind of book. In the book, there was something about a chicken. One of the little second graders says, oh, you know how my abuela kills a chicken? And all of a sudden, all these little kids around the carpet start talking about how their people in their family kill a chicken. And so she wrote me an email and she said, what do you think? And I said, I think the how-to needs to be how to kill a chicken. And she said, can I do that? And I said, the standard is a how-to.
How-to.
Who cares what they're writing a how-to about?
They can relate to
this.
this.
So she wound up writing an article that was published about valuing local knowledge, which is what one of the points that Jonathan's talking about. The goal, the objective was writing a how-to. These kids don't bring peanut butter and jelly. They bring, whatever, rice, beans, tortilla, so they want to talk about how to kill a chicken. It gave them something to go home and talk to their parents about. They wrote about it. They were successful, so that's
and that's a great example of a teacher being able to go with where the class is leading her or him. So are you ready to play Brainstorm?
Yeah.
I guess so.
Okay. It's called Brainstorm because we are lazy. So it works. In the tradition of brainstorming, we will talk about 8 ideas, and if it's a good idea, if it's true, then we'll keep it, and if it's not, then you get to ball it up and make a basket.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 1, urban students have different needs and experiences than other students.
True.
Definitely.
Okay, very good. Number 2, zip code has little impact on education.
Now,
Who wants to do it?
You take the shot.
Here you go.
A lot of pressure here.
A lot of pressure. I know. Everybody's watching. Look at that. See?
Okay.
All right, now there's pressure on
Now
you.
there's pressure on you.
Pressure has shifted. Idea 3, inequality in resources impacts student performance.
Yes.
Yes, very much so. I hope everybody out that's watching the show realizes resources mean so much. 4, urban students should perform as well as their suburban peers.
I think no. I don't think it's.
I don't think that should be the expectation,
Yeah.
given the
Yeah,
resources
that's
of where we are
it's
now.
Not it's not even fair to pit urban and suburban.
No.
Yeah.
And what do we mean
And
by
that is a
perform?
common, and that is
Right,
a common
exactly. What
thought.
do we mean by perform?
Oh, look at
You
that.
guys were
I think mine was
practicing in the
smoother,
parking
too.
lot.
It was.
Okay, urban students aren't trying as hard as other students.
Oh, that's crazy. Throw it out.
Right?
Should I do this with my eyes closed?
Oh, wow. A little bravado
Did I
there.
make it?
Number 6, the only thing needed to level the playing field is money.
No.
There you go. Number 7, teachers, almost, you just got it. Teachers who want to make a difference should avoid urban education.
No.
Thank you. Thank you. We need the best and the brightest there. Underhand.
Underhand.
Last one.
All right.
Urban students are creative, resilient, and deserving of an equal education.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
we all agree on that one. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise and sharing with the viewers what the needs of urban education students are, and for the teachers who are considering it, we really need great teachers to go into the urban fields. It's lovely. You'll love the kids. They're amazing. I want to thank the viewers for joining us for another episode of Brainstorm, and we'll see you next time.
Patriotism. It inspires passionate debate. It's worn like a badge of honor with good reason, because it means love and devotion for one's country. But what really makes up this country of ours? It's the people. To love America is to love all Americans. This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Love beyond age, sexuality, disability, race, religion, and other labels. Because love has no labels.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.